Hi, I'm Paul Tokunaga. I'm the president of Meld. Meld stands for Multi-Ethnic Leadership Development. Meld's mission is to equip collegiate coaches and student athletes to thrive in our racially diverse world. I'll be telling you more about Meld in a minute. In our last video, I took you on my personal journey of hating being Japanese American for about the first 20 years of my life. I then shared how a traumatic episode when I was about 20 pushed me to explore and finally own my ethnic identity. In this video, I'm going to unpack that for you. But let me tell you a bit about Meld. We're a relatively new company. Meld stands for Multi-Ethnic Leadership Development. During the last 45 years, I've worked for a nonprofit serving colleges and universities. Of those 45 years, the most recent 40 of them have involved training faculty, administrators, and students to build healthier relationships across cultures. I've discovered the best starting point in helping us thrive in our racially diverse world is to first deepen our own ethnic identity. All of us have an ethnic identity. When we explore our ethnic identity, own it, and grow in it, we put ourselves in a place to help others to grow as well. My wife and I really enjoy two great TV programs. One is called Who Do You Think You Are? The other is Finding Your Roots. These reality shows help individuals uncover things about their past and then how they might play a role in who they are today. They spend thousands of dollars on extensive DNA testing, hiring genealogists to research family backgrounds and to send them on rabbit trails around the country and often to other countries. You or I probably don't have the budget to do those kinds of things, but that doesn't leave us without invaluable resources. In the next couple of minutes, I'm going to lead you through a simple exercise that will cost your budget this much: zero. What it will cost you, though, is an investment in remembering things from your past. For some of us, we have buried some of those memories. Why? Because they were very painful. So why relive those awful experiences? What good can come from dredging up those hard memories? When I was in grad school, I participated in an exercise called Stepping Stones. Our professor, Virginia Hearn, explained it to us. The format is really very simple, but can lead to profound personal discoveries. Ms. Hearn told us to take out a blank sheet of paper, and down the left-hand margin, write 1, drop down a line or 2, write 2, and so on through 10. Then she told us, I want you to think about the events or people that have most profoundly shaped who you are today. Some of those events or people may be positive influences. Some may be negative or hurtful, but nonetheless, they shaped you in deep ways that show up in your life regularly today. In a word or a phrase, put down up to 10 of those things, stepping stones she called them, that have profoundly shaped who you are today. Now, over the decades since Miss Hearn's class, I've led dozens of groups through this exercise. Now, I wish I could be sitting in a room with you right now to take you through it in person and to hear your stepping stone stories. But with the help of video technology, we can have the same experience. Today, we're using the stepping stone exercise to focus on our ethnic identity, specifically how you see yourself and how you see people of other ethnicities. So I want you to think about your stepping stones, significant people or events in that context. To stimulate your thinking about your own stepping stones, I'm going to share with you some parts of my ethnic journey by sharing 3 of my ethnic stepping stones. As I share, keep in mind that as you listen, my story will not be your story. Each of us has her own unique, special story. But as you listen to mine, hopefully you'll identify with a few things I have gone through, and they might remind you of something similar in your past that has profoundly shaped you. You might want to jot down a few notes if something I share reminds you of something in your own life, your own experience. For me, my story really begins when Pearl Harbor was bombed by Japan in 1941. Mass hysteria swept our country, especially where there were a lot of Asians. At the time, that was primarily on the West Coast. 120,000 Americans of Japanese ancestry on the West Coast were sent to internment or prison camps in 1942. This was my first major stepping stone, even though the camps closed 6 years before I was born. Sometimes things profoundly shape us that aren't a direct part of our experience, but they're part of the reality that we're simply born into. So they were sent to one of 10 permanent camps that were set in desolate places in the Sierras, the Rockies, Arkansas, either deserts or swamps. Communities were split. Families were sometimes split up. It ruined most of them financially, just when they could see the American dream might actually be for them as well. So in the minds of these 120,000 Japanese Americans, it created huge questions. What did I do wrong to deserve this? I must have done something, but what? How am I not a loyal American? They felt this overwhelming sense of shame and betrayal, but they couldn't put their finger on anything they had done. They felt like second-class American citizens at best. My 4 siblings and I grew up in a household with parents who were out to prove you were wrong, American government, you were dead wrong. But this rarely came out in words. It was too painful to share with their children. Rather, it came out in incredible industriousness and perseverance. We'll show you by proving we can be as good an American as you. It was not the Japanese way to make a fuss or to protest, but unspoken shame permeated our home. Recently on Facebook, an Asian American friend asked, "When was the first time you were victim of a racial slur?" My immediate thought was, even though I was born 6 years after the internment camps closed, I feel like I was born a racial slur. That was my stepping stone number 1, the Japanese American internment. Now imagine a field of strawberries, strawberry fields forever, hundreds of bright red berries. All of a sudden, you see a single stalk of corn and you go, huh? You can't believe it's there. You can't understand why it's there. How did that stalk of corn get there? Now, imagine an elementary school playground full of kids. Most are fair-skinned with curly or wavy blonde and brown hair. Then, what? Look over there in the corner, hanging out by the fence. There's one with darker skin, black hair, without curl or wave. I was that stalk of corn. I was that blackhead. I was off in the corner making friends with the fence. We got close those years at Hamilton Elementary School, that fence and me. Stepping stone number 2, I realized I was different than the rest, and I hated it. My mission in life from kindergarten through 12th grade was to blend in, don't be unusual, don't be unique. I was a nail always waiting to be nailed down, and I lived in fear of the hammer. My parents and my community modeled this for us. They knew being sent back to camp could happen again, and the best strategy was to lay low, don't make waves, succeed, but succeed quietly. But it was awfully hard to blend in on the west side of San Jose in the 50s and 60s. We were one of a few Japanese American Buddhists in a suburb full of European American Catholics and Protestants. West San Jose back then, before it became Silicon Valley, was about 90% white. There were a few Latinos and fewer Asians, and in my high school of about 1,600, one black student. I shared what this felt like in the previous video. So much of my teen years revolved around physical appearance. This is where the rubber met the road for me. I didn't think my physical appearance appealed to white girls. I'd look into the mirror. Now, why isn't my nose longer? Why aren't my eyes wider? Why isn't my hair curlier? How come I'm not taller? Of course, there was the biggie. Why can't I grow hair on my chest like my Italian friends? Stepping stone number 2, I realized I was different than the rest, and I hated it. In the spring of 1993, I was mowing our front lawn in Atlanta. My next-door neighbor, Tim, sauntered over. He was tired of our neighbor across the street from us shredding the baseballs with his lawnmower when his son and my son would play catch in the street, and sometimes the balls ended up in our mutual neighbor's yard. Tim said he was going to tell our neighbor to return those baseballs to us. I'm going to call our neighbor John Rifle Barrel to protect the guilty. And because it reminds me of his real name, really, it does. After I finished mowing the lawn, I went next door and I asked Tim how his conversation with John went. I expected him to toss me a couple of baseballs. Now, Tim is usually pretty white, but as he opened his door, he was really white. He said it was a bad conversation. I asked him to tell me what John had said, and Tim refused. He said, John said things about me that he could not repeat. Come on, Tim, I've heard it all. Just tell me. But Tim refused again. But he gave me this little peek at the content of their conversation. John had served in the Pacific Theater during World War II. He was a disabled veteran. He hated Japanese. And now he had one for a neighbor. Soon after that conversation, John sent us a certified letter. He threatened to sue us for $45,000 for our son Sam breaking his grandson's nose, which did not happen. He called Sam an uncontrollable animal, and he threatened to throw him into juvenile detention. He wrote, I did it with my daughter, so don't think I won't do that to Sam. A few Sunday mornings later, when he knew we were away at church, he had someone leave threatening calls on our answering machine. We had to retain a lawyer. These episodes were creating a fear for our physical safety, especially for Sam, who is half Japanese, and for me. Sam's worst fear was Mr. Rifle Barrel would break into our house with a shotgun and shoot us all. And I could not tell him in all honesty that this would never happen. For 5 years, from 1993 to 1998, I had to keep looking over my shoulder after picking up the morning newspaper, or whenever I mowed the lawn. I had to make sure he wasn't there doing something, about to do something. When I went to our mailbox for mail, I was always checking for a bomb or the like, because I knew racial hatred provoked some people to do crazy things like that. One afternoon, Sam and I were tossing a football in the street about 30 feet up from his house. All of a sudden, Sam froze. Dad, Mr. Rifle Barrel has a gun. At that point, I was so tired of being harassed, I wanted a good reason to get a restraining order, so I kept throwing the ball back to Sam. Dad, he's got a gun and he's aiming it at us. Yeah, it's okay, Sam. I don't think he can hit us from where he is. I kept throwing the ball. Dad! Finally, Sam's good sense convinced me that watching some football on TV was a safer activity for us to partake in. For several years, about every 6 months, when it looked like Mr. Rifle Barrel had put his hatred aside, he'd do something to remind me how much he hated me. How did we handle this? Through prayer and forgiveness. I began looking upon my neighbor not with anger, but deep sorrow. I looked for ways to protect his dignity in all of this, but at the same time, not do anything stupid to jeopardize my family. I prayed for him regularly, and most importantly, I forgave him. It wasn't easy, but I forgave him. In 1998, they moved out, and we have continued to live in the same neighborhood since then. Stepping stone number 3, you must forgive those who have hurt you. So these are 3 of my ethnic stepping stones. They profoundly shape my ethnic identity. Now it's your turn. Here are a few questions that you might get your brain remembering. What people who didn't look like you really shaped your life, for better or worse? What events involving people who didn't look like you changed how you view them? And what assumptions or stereotypes did you grow up with that shaped your views of different people groups and probably still do today? So find a piece of paper and title it My Ethnic Stepping Stones. Number it 1 through 6. You can always add a few more numbers later, but try to come up with 6 for now. So grab a cup of coffee or tea, pet your dog, and here we go. You might want to set aside about 30 to 45 minutes to work on your ethnic stepping stones. Creating your own ethnic stepping stones is like peeling off the layers of an onion. Now, you can file your ethnic stepping stones and never think of them again. I encourage you not to do that. Put them somewhere. Your journal, your bathroom mirror, your homepage on your computer, where you will be reminded of them and you can continue to reflect on them. Continue asking yourself, how have these significant markers in my life shaped who I am and how I view other people who are different than me? These stepping stones and the important time of reflection will reveal a lot about your ethnic identity. And then be sure to share your ethnic stepping stones with somebody else. Choose someone who knows you pretty well, who probably won't freak out over any of your ethnic stepping stones and can help you to reflect on them. If you're able to do stepping stones as a team or a staff, you might consider this as a format. Commit at least an hour block to have 3 to 4 people share their stepping stones and to have time for others to later ask questions about what they shared. If you just don't have that kind of time, have one other person do this exercise on their own, maybe a coworker, maybe a fellow coach, a friend, and then go to lunch together and each talk about what you discovered with your ethnic stepping stones. Now, I'm a visual person. When I'm leading this exercise with a group, I like to hand out actual stones and then have them take a Sharpie and write down a word or a phrase on each stone so they can remember what it is. Places like Michael's craft store carry perfect rocks for this. Or, like me, check your own garden first. I encourage them to take their stones home with them and then place them somewhere where they can continue to reflect upon them. You may be saying to yourself, I'm a coach. How does this make me a better coach? Or if you're an athlete, how does this make me a better athlete? How is this going to help us win more games or win more matches? Now, I cannot promise overnight changes in your department or on your team, but over time, I believe that any team that recognizes and then maximizes each teammate's uniqueness can be transformed into a higher performing team. Being aware of your own ethnic identity and how you see others is a critical starting point. Being able to talk about those things with one another is crucial for developing a healthy atmosphere in our racially diverse settings. Today's coaches and student athletes need to have tools like this to thrive in our racially diverse world. Meld can give you tools for success. Our toolkit is full of resources that will break down walls of differences on your staff or on your team. I have seen it happen over and over again as I've trained university personnel and students over the past 40 years. In a few days, I'm going to send you an email about another tool from our toolkit that you'll find helpful. But until then, have a great day.